to get your thoughts on Dricus as a champion, his run so far, and what do you make of his grappling?
What do you think, guys? How I done with this guy, Rob? How he done? Rob took him down. So if Rob took him down, so there is salam alaikum.
So Dricus Du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. What does this fight look like, man? What does this fight look like? Because coming off of a massive win and a very dominant win at UFC 312, DDP went out there and on 2 out of the 3 scorecards, clean swept Sean Strickland. Went out there and 50-45'd him. And to go out there and do that to one of the best strikers in the division, one of the best defensive fighters in all of the UFC, is incredibly impressive on behalf of Dricus Du Plessis. And this is a guy that continues to evolve his skill set, a guy that continues to get better in all aspects of mixed martial arts. Now looming in the wings, we have what just might be the biggest name at 185 pounds right now in Khamzat Chimaev, right? Khamzat Chimaev back at UFC 308 absolutely stunned the world and ran right through Robert Whittaker. I mean, he didn't stun me, and I know a lot of us out there predicted him to go out there and run right through Robert Whittaker, and we took a lot of shit for that, right? A lot of people were saying, oh, you're just glazing Khamzat, Jake, you're just glazing him. And I said, no, man, Robert Whittaker has never seen this type of grappler, this type of beast when it comes to the wrestling, that like a Khamzat and what Chimaev brings to the table. But when you talk about a potential matchup between DDP and Khamzat, I just keep describing this as batshit crazy, because that is exactly what this matchup is, because I think it's a very interesting but rather straightforward matchup. And the reason for that being, can Dricus Du Plessis stop what Khamzat Chimaev has been doing to basically everybody, right? And I know when we talk about the career of Khamzat Chimaev, there are 2 fights that do raise some questions for a lot of folks, right? The first one being against Gilbert Burns, right? And Gilbert Burns, that was Khamzat's first test inside of his MMA career, right? Other than that, Khamzat had just been running through absolutely everybody, taking people down, mauling them, and then just basically taking 0 damage. He's fighting, people, 2 times in, less than 2 weeks over in Fight Island. This guy was just bursting onto the scene, running through everyone. And he finds his first, legit opposition in the UFC, and it's Gilbert Burns. And he goes to absolute war with Gilbert Burns. And a lot of people kind of, they hound on him for that. They're like, well, you couldn't run through Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns, he's a tough guy. He's got good submissions. He's got power in his hands. And I think Khamzat, he was nervous to enter the grappling due to the fact that Gilbert Burns does have very, very good submissions off of his back especially. So I think that was a learning opportunity for Khamzat Chimaev in that fight. And he went to war. We got to see he's got grit, he's got heart, he can dig deep. We saw all of those things from Khamzat Chimaev. Then he goes out there against Kevin Holland, ran right through him. Then he takes on Kamaru Usman. It was supposed to be Paulo Costa, and then Usman steps in on short notice. And this is the fight that started to raise some questions, because Khamzat Chimaev goes out there and absolutely dominates Kamaru Usman in the first round. But then after the first round, it seemed like we saw a little bit of a dip in the second round, right? We saw Kamaru Usman, as the fight started to play out, put it on Khamzat a little bit. And one of the biggest critiques that we have heard out there, right? For example, Dean Thomas recently was on Ariel Helwani's show saying, look, Khamzat Chimaev in a 1-rounder, I mean, this guy's unstoppable. But in these longer fights, the way that he paces himself, the way he just gets after guys, it's very entertaining. But he's a sprinter. And does he have a style that could go for 5 rounds? That is something that a lot of folks out there are doubting. To where the questions are, can this guy, what happens if he can't get people out of there in the first round or early on? What are we going to see as the fight plays out, especially now that he is at middleweight taking on bigger, stronger, more powerful fighters like a Dricus Du Plessis? Well, went out there against Robert Whittaker and absolutely ran right through him. Shot one of the best low double. I mean, that shot, man, that double leg that he shot from a mile away. I mean, he got like an inch off the ground. I mean, at this point, I don't know how you stop that shot, because Khamzat loves to back you up against the fence. So then that way you have no escape route. You can't sprawl because your back is up against the fence. You don't have the room to where I'm like, if you get backed up against the fence, you're just probably going to have to hurdle this damn shot. I don't know what you're supposed to do when this guy gets that damn low and he gets in on the double. And the way that he leg rides and is just able to control guys is some of the best that we have ever seen in the sport. And it's the aggressive attitude and pace that he brings to the wrestling that I think presents a lot of problems for a lot of fighters. Now, and obviously Khamzat is incredibly confident in his skill set, but what adds to that is when you go out there and absolutely destroy Robert Whittaker, and then you go back and you watch the tape, and you see Dricus Du Plessis get taken down and put on his back by Robert Whittaker. That'll have a guy like Khamzat Chimaev. Remember when he pulled up to the UFC 308 post-fight presser? Rob took him down. What do you think? I think this very salam alaikum. You know, it's going to have Khamzat Chimaev, a very confident man, seeing that and being like, if Rob could take him down and put him on his back, he's thinking, what do you think I'm going to do? Everyone's going to have the question of, can he go out there and do that to Dricus Du Plessis? And that is the question that we are going to have to find out in the fight, because what concerns me on the side of Khamzat Chimaev is if he gets stuck on the feet. If there's a scenario to where against a big powerhouse like Dricus Du Plessis, what happens if Khamzat can't, out-grapple him? I mean, I think that he will take him down and will have some success, but it's not just the wrestling that Khamzat brings to the table. It's the overall athletic ability that this guy has. I mean, he is lightning fast with the way he enters with these takedowns, and I think that's something that Khamzat brings to the middleweight division that is going to make him a legit problem. On top of everything is his speed, and especially the technicalities when it comes to the grappling, because this guy just doesn't go out there and wrestle. He has very, very dangerous submissions and very good ground and pound that he works in with the wrestling that makes him incredibly dangerous overall with the grappling. And I do think that he will out-grapple him early. But what if DDP survives that initial onslaught? What if DDP can defend the takedowns, work his way back to his feet, put the pressure on Khamzat Chimaev, and give Khamzat a little bit of a taste to what we saw Gilbert Burns do to Chimaev? Because if that's DDP standing in front of Khamzat, that's a hell of a lot different than a guy like Gilbert Burns. This is a true 185er, a big powerhouse. And Dricus, who is out there evolving his skill set, is a guy that has big power in his hands. He's got power in his kicks. He switches stances. He mixes everything incredibly well together. And on top of that, he has a very, very good team behind him, and they do a very good job of game planning and strategically coming into these fights that Dricus has. So I would like to think they're going to have the mindset of, we want to be aggressive. Don't allow Khamzat to just back us up to where we can't sprawl out of, the initial shot that Khamzat's going to take, because he's going to do it. Khamzat's going to do it. He's going to go right after Dricus Du Plessis with very, very little respect for the grappling. So it's going to be on Dricus Du Plessis to, one, stuff the takedown, or if he does get taken down, show Khamzat that you do have grappling that can keep up with what he brings to the table. Now, if Khamzat does do what he does, right, he would presumably go in there and run right through DDP, take him down, submit him, get him out of there, and it would look like what we all kind of see when Khamzat goes out there and puts on a dominant performance. But if he can't get that done, that is why this matchup is so intriguing to me, because Dricus Du Plessis, he's someone that has gained a ton of respect in the MMA world and has just, skyrocketed, into being a fan favorite fighter, and rightfully so, because DDP will take on anyone, anytime, any place. This is a guy that was calling for the Khamzat Chimaev fight before the Sean Strickland rematch. After Khamzat did that to Whittaker, he's like, that's the guy I want next. That's who everyone says is the boogeyman. That's who everyone wants to see me fight. Give me that guy. And Dricus Du Plessis, he's just that guy, but he presents a skill set that I think is very troubling for Khamzat if Khamzat cannot get him out of there early, because I do not think that Dricus is a better wrestler than Khamzat Chimaev. I think Khamzat is a much better wrestler than DDP. When it comes to the pure athletic ability and just the brute strength that DDP brings to the table, I think that is something different than what Khamzat has seen inside of the octagon thus far. And I know Khamzat's out there, he's doing all sorts of, wrestling training, and he's doing all these spectacular things, and he could go in there and ragdoll anybody. I've said that before, from when he was at welterweight, 185, 205 heavyweight. If it was just a one-round grapplers, whatever, even a fight, I think Khamzat Chimaev could beat basically anybody. This guy is so dangerous when it comes to the grappling. But if he cannot get DDP out of there, what happens? What happens when you're standing in front of Dricus Du Plessis, a guy who is a much better striker, right? Because I do believe Khamzat Chimaev has underrated striking. I think he's got good power in his hands. He does have some good kicks. but he doesn't do the best job defensively to where he will get lit up on the feet. We saw that against Gilbert Burns, where he got rocked badly in that fight. But we also got to see his striking on display, which was one of kind of the rare times, because most of the time, Khamzat just went right after these guys, taking them down, and then that's just kind of been the end. To where against Gilbert Burns, we got to see him go out there and, throw some kicks, throw some combinations on the feet, and he was even able to drop Gilbert Burns. So this guy absolutely possesses power on the feet. We saw Kamaru Usman later in the third round really start to pour it on Khamzat, or throughout the third round, started to really pour it on Khamzat Chimaev. So when you look at this fight, the reason I wanted this fight, the reason it's so intriguing to me is because to me it's very simple. If Khamzat Chimaev could go out there, he could bulldoze Dricus Du Plessis with the grappling, overwhelm him, make it chaotic, and do what he does, that he would go out there and absolutely, maul Dricus Du Plessis. But can he do that? Can he do that against a guy who's firing on all cylinders right now? Going out there, beating Sean Strickland to win the belt. Going out there submitting Izzy Adesanya. Then going out there and, shutting down Sean Strickland completely. This is one of the biggest fights in middleweight history between these two. It's why I wanted this fight stylistically. It's incredibly intriguing because what Khamzat does is very dangerous, it's very dominant, and he does have underrated striking that I think he doesn't get the credit he deserves. We saw him go after Gerald Meerschaert, looking, moving forward like he was maybe going to level change, and then boom, uncorked a nasty right hand down the middle. He's got a very good jab. He can switch stances. Khamzat Chimaev is incredibly dangerous. But from what we have seen thus far, if he gets stuck on the feet like a guy like Dricus Du Plessis who can weather an early Chimaev storm, that's where things will get very, very, very interesting. And that's why I can't wait for this fight, man. It's why I can't wait for this fight, because can Chimaev steamroll him? And if he can't, what happens if he gets stuck on the feet with a guy like Dricus Du Plessis, a true 185er?